Can I be open with you guys? I was kind of struggling with any form of video this week. I have some homework that's a little stressful, my brother's having some big plans, and some strange conversations with a company. Sorry if I'm a little vague on that front. I had some video ideas in mind, but nothing that I was super prepared for. I had an unordinary video, but not enough information to really make a full video on it. I had a Lore Olympus video in mind, but I decided to wait on that one. I did eventually want to make a video on Toaster Dude, and worked a little bit on that script. But then I read my Thursday webtoons, and I kinda knew what I should talk about. Now, this may or may not surprise you, but I am subscribed to an ungodly amount of webtoons. While I may not be subscribed to a ton of the popular ones, for example, Tower of God or God of High School, I am subscribed to a few of the lesser known Discover webtoons and a large amount of Canvas webtoons. Now, you might have noticed that I've really only hovered around 3 or 4 different webtoons. That's not a ton of different webtoons. Overall, I've only covered 8 of them in depth on this channel, but I'm subscribed to more than 100 of them. While you might think I have a lot to talk about, there are some webtoons I didn't ever really think I would talk about. Don't get me wrong, I do like all the webtoons I'm subscribed to, some more than others, but there are some that would make for better videos than others. For example, I'd probably have difficulty discussing webtoons like Meow Man, Everywhere and Nowhere, Age Matters, Ghost Theater, and a bunch of other ones. Don't get me wrong, it's not impossible to have ideas about these. Actually, while writing the script, I saw some and I had some vague ideas, but nothing that really stuck with me. And one of these webtoons was Don't Hate. I have been subscribed to Don't Hate for a while now, and if I'm being honest, I was never really 100% fully invested in it. I started reading it a while ago with a friend, and he's kind of what got me through the first half of the first season. However, now I am really glad that I kept with it. Now, I'm assuming that most of you don't have a vested interest in this webtoon, since only one of you asked for it in this poll that I asked a long time ago. So let me just summarize it a little bit. We're here at the beginning, the general summary of how this world works. It all started 100 years ago. Humans started World War IV, causing the human population to decline. In order to combat their enemies, humanity created the greatest army using animals. This has caused animals to evolve and take matters into their own hands. After humanity seemingly went extinct, all sorts of animals rose to power, and we get to see a ton of different animals. The first episode, we see dogs, elephants, koalas, rabbits, pigs, chickens, raccoons, rhinos, and a bear, maybe. And later in episode 6, we get to see how the world is divided. After World War IV, animals began to divide into 5 kingdoms. The Cetacean Kingdom created a safe zone for children. Regardless of their species, all animals under the age of 21 reside in this safe zone. Children are allowed to stay in this safe zone once they turn 21. All 4 of the kingdoms have concluded that the Cetacean Kingdom holds all the power over the rest of the kingdoms. The other kingdoms, as we see in this very strange map of how the world looks, are the Herbivore Kingdom, the Carnivore Kingdom, the Bird Kingdom, and the Reptile Kingdom, or the Reptiles Kingdom. A couple things. First, the Bird Kingdom is the funniest thing I've ever heard. A lot of the other ones make sense, like herbivores, carnivores, reptiles, but birds is just so funny to me. Anyways, in the world that Don't Hate is set in, our story follows Bucky, the only human around after the war, and is generally hated by every animal. For most of season 1, Bucky is constantly on the receiving end of hateful and negative physical, verbal, and emotional attacks by the other animals. It's almost always physical attacks, though. Right at the first episode, we see all the animals shoot spitballs at Bucky. Episode 2, they tie him over a cliff, and later, a cute little hamster drops him into it. And multiple animals have stated that they want to eat him, or have tried to eat him. We hear in episode 8 the simple reason why they hate Bucky. Well, basically, they hate me because I'm a human. It's as simple as that. We get to hear later that humans who are naturally selfish and emotionally irrational all disgust me to my core. Humanity was terrible. It's as simple as that. They did awful things, and everyone who is alive is justified in hating what humanity has done. That's why history is so important. Because when we learn history, we learn from it. We realize the mistakes in our past, the failures of our ancestors, and learn and grow from them. Learn to improve from them. But a problem with that is sometimes the mistakes, the failures, the missteps of our ancestors are pinned onto people who have no part in those accidents. Or sometimes treatment is carried from how they were treated in the past. I don't have to explain that we're in a tough time, and many situations that arise in Don't Hate are present in our current world. I very vaguely discussed how awful Bucky is treated simply because of what his ancestors did to animals. But where this really comes into play is more in Season 2. Season 1 is strangely about world conquest, where Bucky acts kinda like if John just wanted to take over the world and had the intelligence to create things and devices and gadgets to do so. We get to hear Bucky explain, "I want to destroy the world, because I don't want them to hurt my mother. It wasn't for me. I endured cruel treatment and humiliation, all because I know what my ancestors did to animals. But now they want to repeat history." Bucky's mother gets treated terribly because she raised a human. Other animals, like this fabulous horse or some of the other dogs, get treated terribly just because they show Bucky a shred of decency. But the biggest example of this bigotry is the bird kingdom, which still makes me laugh. Burb. Anyways, although the bird kingdom is the funniest name, they're probably the worst kingdom ever. Now, I'm not one for making any political statements on this channel, mainly because I think I should focus on webtoons and what they teach or represent. However, sometimes it can be rather straightforward with how they represent their symbolism. For example, the king of the bird kingdom. You might notice something about him. Just, something that looks familiar to our current climates. Maybe his hair. With our current political climate that I'm very unsure of, I do want to tread lightly here. In Season 2, where everything goes haywire, we get to see a lot of development on the Prince of the Bird Kingdom, the son of the king. This bird. They're eagles, and we get to see very early on some development on eagles. Bald eagles are notorious for their hatred for humans. Long ago, there was once a human race that held bald eagles as their pride and symbol. Eagles were used countlessly as weapons for war and destruction. Unfortunately, after countless of failures, hundreds of bald eagles were massacred by the other human race. This genocide had led bald eagles to detest humanity to their very core. And we get to see a lot of this with the prince, Jackson, and how he's constantly at ends with Bucky, especially in the recent parts of Season 2. And a fair warning, I will be spoiling the latest episode of Don't Hate. And this episode is one of the biggest reasons why I switched to making a Don't Hate video, even if this video might be a little shorter or a little rushed. Once they're in a secret bird laboratory, too long of a story to explain, Jackson sees how terribly some of the birds are treating other birds, experimenting on them, treating them like traitors or villains, wanting to take over the world. Jackson gets told off by this owl, Kay. "Don't act like you're a prince. I know you're doing this for yourself. You are trying to find a valid reason for why your father ordered to perform this experiment. Not for the birds. But the true prince would never do that. If you want me to follow your order, then be a prince. But if you can't, just stay quiet and don't do anything. Just like you always do." Which leads Jackson to a revelation. When Jackson was little, he wanted the bird kingdom to be a place where every bird could fly freely. But his father held him back. "Son, the sky is not big enough for all birds to fly." And when Jackson confronts his dad about poisoning his friend, he responds with, "He's not your friend. Birds who are not eagles cannot be your friend. You need to understand the difference between an eagle and other birds. I wanted you to play with those birds because I want you to understand how we are superior than others. Look at our talons and wings. We are stronger and bigger than any of the birds. You can't be friends with birds that are not in our level. But when Jackson thinks that every bird is equal, his father responds with, "I didn't ask for your opinion. Just remember this. We're better than them. And, son, close your eyes. Don't listen to them. Don't let them read. It's easier to control them when they're uneducated." One of the biggest reasons why I love Webtoon so much isn't because the stories are perfect, isn't because the characters make the best decisions, isn't because the plot always makes sense, isn't because the lore is easy for me to understand, it isn't because the series are all amazing and spectacular, it isn't because the art is beautiful. Don't get me wrong, a lot of that is kinda true sometimes. The stories are great, the characters are fantastic. The plots might have some weird inconsistencies, but I always love them, and the art is always amazing. But the main reason that I love Webtoons is because Webtoon artists and creators are unafraid of making stories that need to be told. Stories like Unordinary, showing the effects of mental health or popularity in bullying. Lore Olympus, showing the awfulness of sexual trauma. Toxic relationships in Webtoons like Brimstone and Roses or Luff or Loof. Webtoons isn't afraid of mentioning those taboos that media tries to avoid. Because to media, it's a risky move. To them, it might not be brand safe. But when we incorporate them here, people learn. People feel represented. People understand the missteps they've taken or how they can make the world just a little bit better. The biggest reason I made this video was because Jackson's ending speech. "Father, I have tried to understand you because I love you. But why? Why did you do this? For power? For money? You're our king. King of all birds, not king of eagles. Eagles or not, we built this kingdom together. We're all the same. So why did you create this division? I always thought it was for our kingdom. But now I know it was for your satisfaction. I tried to believe eagles were superior and tried to look down at this boy. But the truth is, eagles are not superior. You wanted to bring others down to make eagles higher. Father, I'll not avoid the truth anymore. You were wrong from the beginning. The sky is always big enough for every bird to fly."